Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for today's training on temporary protected status clinics. This training is specifically for volunteers who are volunteering at an upcoming TPS clinic. The goal of today's training is to make sure that you are ready to volunteer at that upcoming TPS clinic. And this training was initially developed for a TPS clinic that is run by a coalition of organizations that you see on your screen with all of these logos here. And the training has been modified so that it can be used by other legal service providers who are also running TPS clinics. My name is Stephanie Baez, and I'm pro bono counsel with the American Bar Association Commission on Immigration, and I'll be talking you through the training today for what to expect at your upcoming clinic shift. The overview of what we'll be discussing, first we'll go through the virtual clinic process and what to expect. Then we'll do a review of the TPS and employment authorization document forms. And finally, we will have some frequently asked questions at the end. I strongly suggest that you refer to the videos on this slide for more information on TPS law. We have developed a TPS 101 video for Afghans, which is an introduction to TPS, and a TPS 201 video for Afghans for complex legal issues. This training that I'm giving today piggybacks off of the information that is discussed in those videos. So this training is specifically for volunteers who are going to be volunteering at an upcoming TPS clinic to serve Afghan clients. And it is assumed that you have already watched the TPS 101 and 201 videos, giving you an introduction and a little bit of a higher level dive into the issues facing the applicants that you will be assisting from Afghanistan. There's also a note on this slide to refer to videos for more information on how to file online if you're working for a clinic that will be having online filing. If that's the case, then please refer to the My USCIS for Pro Se Afghan TPS with preparer and interpreter involvement, and also refer to My USCIS for Afghan TPS with limited representation. These videos should all be linked into the tip sheet that the legal service provider that you're working for has given to you, or the legal service provider should have provided you links to these videos by email or some other method so that you have these videos at your disposal. If not, please reach out to the legal service provider that you are working with and they can provide you access to these videos. So to begin, we will discuss the virtual TPS clinic process and what to expect. At the clinic, we have different categories of participants. First and foremost, we have the applicants. Those are the TPS seekers. And in this clinic that this training is geared towards, the TPS seekers are Afghans. So we will be seeing Afghan TPS seekers, but really the clinic model could work for any specific nationality. We also have form preparers. Form preparers are attorney or non-attorney volunteers who help applicants complete their TPS applications and cover letters. So if you're watching this, you might be a form preparer. Form preparers do not need to have any prior immigration experience. They don't need to be attorneys. You could be a law student or a paralegal who's going to be a form preparer. And we are very happy to have you here volunteering. Thank you for stepping up to help this population of TPS seekers. And please don't be worried if you don't have prior experience. This clinic is an excellent opportunity to learn. We also have interpreters who are involved in the clinic process, and they are essential to communication between applicants and volunteers. So thank you very much. If you're an interpreter who is participating in the clinic, we would not be able to host this clinic and have the clinic function without the work of our wonderful interpreters. And then finally, there are legal captains who are also volunteering to help with the clinic process. Legal captains are experienced immigration attorneys who are available to answer legal questions and who will review all of the applications and cover letters before they're finalized in your shifts today. So thank you also to the legal captains for joining us. Legal captains have some experience with TPS and immigration work, Whereas form preparers, this could be your first time coming to this clinic, and that's no problem. So the general clinic overview, what will happen when your shift begins? First, there is a volunteer orientation that will be about a 10 to 15-minute orientation to the volunteers at the outset of the clinic to just review highlights of the process and what to expect. Once the orientation has been complete, form preparers and interpreters will be assigned to Zoom breakout rooms, and they will be placed in Zoom breakout rooms. When you are assigned to your room, please write down the number of the room that you're in, just in case you get disconnected. When you log back into the Zoom, you can say, I got disconnected, I was in room 5, and it's easy enough to send you right back to room 5. So form preparers and interpreters will be assigned to their breakout rooms and moved into those breakout rooms. And then the applicants will join the Zoom for an applicant orientation, and they will receive an overview of what to expect at the clinic. Applicants will then be placed into the breakout rooms with the form preparers and interpreters. So applicants will be matched with the form preparers who are already waiting in the breakout rooms, and they will be sent to join them in those rooms. The legal captains will remain in the Zoom lobby. Legal captains will stay put in the lobby until such time that there's questions that they need to answer or documents that they need to review. Form preparers use WhatsApp, the WhatsApp chat, to let the legal captains know when they have a question and to let them know when they're ready for legal review. So form preparers do not pop in and out of the Zoom rooms. Form preparers stay in their breakout room, and legal captains travel around between the breakout rooms and the lobby to answer questions. So if you have a question, just put it in the WhatsApp chat. We'll talk more about that in a minute, and a legal captain will come to you. Legal captains pop in and out of the breakout rooms to answer questions, and legal captains review all applications before they're finalized. So you cannot end your clinic shift unless a legal captain has reviewed your documents and has signed off on the application. That's the general overview, and we'll be talking about each of these steps in more detail in just a moment. One thing that is essential as you're preparing for your clinic shift is that you are familiar with the TPS tip sheet that the legal service provider that's hosting the clinic has provided to you. The tip sheet includes vital information about the clinic, including the clinic flow and processing, important FAQs about TPS and the TPS process, links to documents that you are going to be filling out during the clinic, and links to resources that you need to access. So please, 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 the number one thing you can do to prepare for clinic is to review the tip sheet, and that'll have all of the information that you need to get you ready to go at clinic. It's also really helpful for you to have the tip sheet available to you during your clinic shift. Either open on a PDF in your computer as you're conducting your shift, or print it out and have it in front of you. But one way or another, please have that tip sheet handy, because you will refer back to it multiple times during your shift. All of the documents that you need to access for your clinic are available through the tip sheet. In the tip sheet, there are links to the I-821, which is the TPS application, links to the I-765, which is the employment authorization document, links to a template cover letter that you can modify for your applicants so that they have a cover letter to accompany them, and links to an exit email. Although this might vary from organization to organization, but the exit email is a template that you can send to your applicant so that they have a summary of everything that was discussed during clinic and of the evidence they need to gather all in one place. So those links are all available in the tip sheet. And again, it's really important that you're familiar with the tip sheet and that you're able to access the links. So please go through and click on the links before the clinic, make sure they work. And if you're having any trouble, let the legal service provider know so that you can have some troubleshooting done in advance of clinic. It's very possible that some of the PDFs that you need to use for clinic have some sections disabled or pre-filled out to help with your clinic shift. So it's important that when you are completing forms for your applicant on the day of the clinic, you're accessing the forms through the tip sheet. To do the TPS application, the I-821, click on the I-821 link in your tip sheet. do not download an I-821 from the internet, from USCIS, or any other source on the internet. It's imperative that you use the version that is in your tip sheet, because that version may have been prepared in advance for you, so that there is information that is specific to your clinic through that form. Now, I mentioned previously that there will be a WhatsApp chat that is used by form preparers to let legal captains know when they need assistance with the documents that they're working on. To use WhatsApp, there are instructions in the tip sheet that link you to where you need to, the link that you need to join the WhatsApp chat. But basically, you can either download the desktop version if you want it on your desktop computer, or you can use WhatsApp as an app on your cell phone. You'll receive the link to your specific WhatsApp chat group through the tip sheet. So again, as I said, and everything you need, the tip sheet is your ultimate guide. Look in the tip sheet for the WhatsApp link. And then you can either go on your phone, where you would open WhatsApp and access WhatsApp web, or on the iPhone, you can start WhatsApp and access again WhatsApp web and desktop. Those instructions are here. And you'll then be prompted by your smartphone's camera to scan the QR code that becomes visible on your web browser. And when you scan that QR code, it's going to link you to your appropriate WhatsApp chat. If you're having any difficulty with that ahead of the clinic, please contact the legal service provider, and they'll make sure that you're able to join the WhatsApp chat so that you're ready to go the day of clinic. Okay, so before clinic, you've reviewed the tip sheet, you have downloaded the WhatsApp chat, and now we are on the day of the clinic. You'll join the Zoom using your Zoom application, and join 15 minutes before before the shift starts. Join your Zoom 15 minutes before the shift starts, so that you're available in there in case there's any tech issues that you need to troubleshoot. Once you join the Zoom, please rename yourself on Zoom. You can do that by clicking on the dots down at the bottom panel on your Zoom screen. You right-click your name and then rename yourself to indicate what your role is in the clinic. For example, if you are a legal captain, you would say legal captain, and you put your languages and then your preferred name. If you're a form preparer, you can put prep to indicate that you're a form preparer. This information is also in the tip sheet, but just so it's here and you have it handy, the abbreviations, you're going to abbreviate your role, either put prep if you're a form preparer, interpreters put INT, and legal captains put CAPT, capt, for captain. And then also indicate if you have any language skills. So either you're an interpreter and indicate what language you speak, or you might be a form preparer who also speaks a language that's relevant to your clinic. In this case, it would be Dari or Pashto, and you either put Dari or Pash in your name so that we know what languages you speak. If you only speak English, then put ENG for English, and that indicates your language. So the example here, if my name is Marie John Doe and I'm a Dari speaker and a form preparer, I will rename myself as Prep for preparer, Dari for my language, and Marie for my name. And that way everyone on the call knows who you are and they can assign you to the appropriate Zoom rooms and make sure the clinic runs smoothly. Once you've renamed yourself on Zoom and you've had your orientation, then you will be assigned to a breakout room. So you'll join the breakout room that whoever is providing tech assistance in your clinic will assign you to a breakout room. And then when you're in the breakout room, you need to be patient. It might take a little while before an applicant and interpreter are assigned to your room. This is because, as I mentioned at the outset, the applicants will join the Zoom after you're assigned to your breakout room, and the applicants will undergo a brief orientation, and then they will be matched with you and other volunteers in the breakout rooms. So you might be waiting a while as the applicants are kind of undergoing their orientation and then being placed in the breakout rooms. It's a quick orientation, but it still, takes a few minutes. So Please be patient. The clinic staff can see whether you have anyone else in your breakout room with you or not. So they're aware of what's going on. If you feel like you've been waiting for a while and you don't have an applicant, then you can go ahead and message the WhatsApp group and let everyone know you're still waiting for an applicant. And the staff will let you know, yeah, we're still conducting orientation, or, oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. But for the most part, you can expect to wait for a little while. And so please be patient for an applicant to come to you. Once the applicant has come into your Zoom room, share your screen. Share your screen and please turn your camera on and introduce yourself to the applicant. This is so you can actually connect with the applicant through the virtual setting. It can be an overwhelming and intimidating process for an applicant to meet with an attorney. So it's important to have that human connection. So please turn on your camera and then share your screen so that the applicant can see what documents you are completing. That really helps. A lot of the form information will be biographic information. And if you're misspelling a name or accidentally inverted dates for a birthday or some minor error like that, the applicant can see it right away and help correct it so that those errors don't get lost or overlooked in the application. And sharing your screen makes it possible for legal captains to easily see the documents as well. When they jump in, instead of you describing the answer to question 31A, should it be this? They just can see exactly what's going on and look at the forms in real time with you, and it makes their job easier as well. So turn on your camera and share your screen with the applicant so that they can see the forms that you're working on. The recommended process to run for the general flow of your meeting with the applicant is that first you will double check for red flags, and I'll talk about that process in just a minute. Then complete the I-821 TPS application. Then complete the I-765 employment authorization document if it's needed and relevant to your applicant. Then you will complete a cover letter. And then at that point, once those documents are done, you send a WhatsApp message to a legal captain for legal review. You might have had the legal captain come in earlier, regardless if they had specific questions, if you had specific questions that you wanted them to answer. But even if they haven't been popping in and out of your room, at this point, they must come review all of your documents. And once they've reviewed everything and signed off, then you will send the applicant an exit email that includes the different documents that you prepared for them. You'll send to them an email, and also complete an exit form that allows you to upload the documents so that the legal service provider has them in a safe place in case they're needed down the road. So that's your general flow. And now we're going to talk about these things individually in more depth. So the checking for red flags or the initial analysis. We raise this because a pro se clinic is really best suited for applicants who do not have complicating factors in their case. So if there are complicating factors, it doesn't necessarily mean that someone is not eligible for TPS, but it might mean that they need further consultation with an attorney, an individualized consultation, a more in-depth consultation that's not appropriate for the clinic setting. So the applicants have been pre-screened before you meet with them, but sometimes things don't always come out in the pre-screening, and once you start your appointment and meet with them on Zoom, additional information arises. So we ask our volunteers to do a little screening at the beginning before jumping into the forms. And that kind of initial red flag check is to check what date the applicant arrived in the United States. Did they arrive prior to the requisite continuous presence and continuous residence dates? And you'll remember from the TPS for Afghans 101 and 201 trainings that for Afghanistan, the applicants need to be here prior to March 15th, 2022. If they were not in the United States before that date, it's a red flag. Does the applicant have any criminal history, either in the United States or in their home country? Is the applicant a citizen of more than one country? And did the applicant reside in another country immediately prior to arriving to the United States? Not just visit, but did they reside in another country? How long did they stay in other countries before passing to the United States? If any of the answers to these questions trigger red flags, then call a legal captain in to assess the red flags, to talk with the applicant and with you to determine if the applicant can be served in the clinic, or if it's better for the applicant to be referred to another attorney for a more in-depth consultation. As I said previously, red flags don't always mean that a complicating factor is present or that the applicant can't apply for TPS or can't be seen at the clinic. For example, the clinic still can serve most likely applicants who traveled through other countries on their way to the United States, applicants who have TRIG exemptions, which again, you'll remember from the TPS 101 and 201 videos. TRIG exemptions refer to terrorism-related inadmissibility grounds, and there are certain exemptions for Afghans who might answer yes to some of the terrorism-related or military-related questions. They can still receive TPS. And applicants who have parking tickets or speeding tickets, there's questions that ask about traffic violations, or when you ask about criminal history, they might say, oh, I got these tickets. They can still be served most likely, but it's best to have that conversation with your legal captain. If you're not sure, again, I will just keep reiterating this, check with the legal captains and shift supervisor if you're not sure whether an applicant can be served. And ultimately, you might decide that it is appropriate to serve one of these applicants in the TPS clinic, but you need to include an explanation of whatever the potential issue is on an addendum page, and that's something that a legal captain can help you with as well. So once you've reviewed met with the applicant and kind of reviewed their situation for any red flags, then you can jump into document preparation. And the document preparation goes over these documents listed here: the I-821, the I-765, which is for work authorization, so this is only if applicable to your applicant, and then a cover letter. Some clinics may allow for fee waivers to be completed during the clinic, and if that's so, then the legal service organization that you're working with will let you know that you can also help with fee waivers. Other clinics might decide that fee waivers are outside the scope of what the clinic is working on. So fee waivers are not addressed in this training, but if your clinic is one where applicants who are not able to pay the filing fee can apply for fee waivers through your clinic, then the legal services organization who is hosting your clinic will let you know more information about that process. But let's jump in now to the I-821, the application for TPS. This is what the paper application looks like to start, and we're going to go through the different pages. I'm not going to go through it question by question, but we will go page by page and talk about important information on each page. Please refer to the My USCIS videos that I mentioned at the outset of this presentation if you are going to be completing online filing. Those videos will walk you through the step-by-step process for online filing and will help really address what you need to do if you're filing through My USCIS. But this is what the paper application looks like for clinics that are using paper applications. Page 1 is pretty straightforward. You indicate here that it's the first time applying for TPS. If someone is requesting an employment authorization document, then they check that box here. If not, they'll check the box no, that they're not. The name of the country that they are the TPS designated country that they're applying as a national of that country, and then they put their name. So pretty straightforward first page. Second page, the first box here is for other names used. They might not have any other names used, and then you skip over these boxes. But it's important to ask the applicant whether they maybe used a middle name in their home country and whether that name is still being used in the United States. Or if their alphabet is different than the alphabet in the US, maybe their name has been spelled differently since they arrived to the United States. So even if they don't have multiple names like aliases, they might have different, their legal documents might show different names with or without a middle name, with different spellings. And if that's the case, it's important to include those different names and different spellings here. The next box asks for their mailing address, and then the physical address you can check Whether it's the same, if the physical and mailing addresses are the same, then you just check yes, and don't need to refill that information. Then question 7 here asks for an alien registration number, which we refer to as an A number. An A number is a 9-digit number that appears at the top of immigration documents. If you're working with an applicant who has prior work authorization or who was paroled into the United States, then they should have an A number. If you're not sure whether they have an A number or not, and if they're not able to find it, then this is a good chance to call in a legal captain who can help try to figure out, does the applicant have an A number, and where is the A number located on their form, so that you can correctly fill out that information here. This section here asks countries of residence before entering the United States. So that's important to disclose if there's been other countries where they lived, not just passing through, but established a residence before entering the United States. And they can disclose dual citizenship as well on this page if there is any dual citizenship that goes here. Now, the next section asks about marital information. And then we go on to US entry information here on this page. And the US entry information can get a little bit complicated. So again, don't hesitate to call your legal captain in if you have any questions about this section. The US entry information wants to know the date that the applicant entered the United States and what their status was at the time that they entered. Were they paroled in? Did they have any status? Was it no status? Did they have a visitor visa and now they're seeking TPS as well? And so you indicate what status applies to them in this section, and indicate what port of entry, where did they arrive. One of the next questions is whether the applicant has an I-94 arrival or departure record. If they were paroled into the United States, then they most likely have an I-94. They should have an I-94. If not, if they entered without inspection and came across the border without inspection, then they likely do not have an I-94. If you've got questions about this section, again, call your legal captain in to come and help understand your individual applicant's specific circumstances and whether it makes sense that they would or would not have an I-94. One other thing to note on this page, it asks for passport number, and then it asks here at question number 26 about a travel document number. Travel documents are generally documents provided to people who do not have passports, who were issued a different type of document for travel outside the United States. So you don't need to repeat the passport number as a travel document number. This is a distinct number from the passport. Not everyone will have a travel document number. So the information about the passport goes in question number 25. And then if they used a different kind of document, a different type of travel document to leave the United States or enter the United States, that travel document number can go in number 26. And then over here, it asks whether the applicant has current status, whether you can put here if they're a parolee, if they are seeking asylum, a pending asylum application, that information can go here. Are you now or were you ever in immigration proceedings? If they've been in immigration proceedings, then you need to check yes, and that means that they've been in immigration court and have had a notice to appear filed and served on them, and that they've appeared in immigration court. Those people would be people who are considered to have been in immigration proceedings. But again, call your legal captain in if you're confused about this and it's a little unclear, and the legal captain will help understand what's going on and make sense of it so that it's all clear as needed on this application. The next section asks about biographic information, straightforward ethnicity and race. And then on the following page, looking at height, weight, eye color, hair color, pretty straightforward information there. Next, we get to part 4, information about your current spouse. And this part is all grayed out here, blocked out, because for your application, if you're helping someone who is applying for TPS for the first time, then these sections do not need to be, if they're timely filing for TPS for the first time, then these sections do not need to be filled out. These sections really are only applicable for applicants who missed the initial filing deadlines and they're filing late. Those people need to provide additional information. But for the clinic setting, people who you're working with should all be timely filing for TPS. And so they don't need to do this. So this information is all blacked out. And then we've got this page, part 5, easiest part on the application, crossed out, part 6, crossed out, crossed out. Now, the legal services provider that you're working with may have grayed out these boxes on the forms that you're working with so that it's not even possible to enter information there to avoid any confusion. That's something that some clinics decide to do. So if you're not able to enter information there, then that's likely why. So we skip over parts 4, 5, and 6, and then it's important to note that we pick up here on part 7, which is hiding at the bottom of page 6. So it's all this information that we're skipping, but then there's one little question down here about what country the TPS seeker that you're helping is from. So you need to be sure to fill in info in part 7. And it starts there for eligibility standards. And then part 7 goes on for a few pages. The eligibility standards here ask to name all of the other countries that you traveled through before entering the United States. Really what we're looking for here are countries that were traveled through between leaving Afghanistan and entering the US. So not if there was a vacation many years ago or trips to other countries that took place before that kind of initial journey from Afghanistan to the US. Instead, what they're looking for here are what countries did you travel through since leaving your home country and arriving in the United States? And how long did you stay in those countries? This is getting to some of the firm resettlement issues that you would have heard about in the Afghan 101 and 201 TPS trainings. So it wants to know every country, regardless of even if it was just a layover and you were only there for a couple hours for a day. Layover information needs to be included, as well as countries where there might have been longer stays. So all of that information gets disclosed here, and it can be continued in an addendum and additional information if the list is too long to include here on this page. And then it asks for dates that you were in those countries. Again, even if it was just for one day, as for a layover for a couple hours, then that information goes on this form. And then what status did the applicant have in that country? Did they have any sort of temporary status? Did they have a student visa? Did they have a visitor visa? Did they not have any status? They were just hopping through with no status. That information goes here as well. Maybe they were just a visitor passing through without any sort of visa. So include that information here to indicate what type of status they had in the countries that they passed through, and whether they were ever offered any immigration status by the other country that they did not accept. If they answer yes to that question, then they need to provide a little further explanation here for so that USCIS has the full information. And again, call in your legal captain if you have questions. If you've got a list that doesn't fit here and you need to use an addendum and have questions about how to do that, rely on those legal captains to come in and help talk you through this process. Next, we go through a list of yes or no questions, a long list of yes or no questions that are eligibility standards. One thing to note here, these questions, some of them are repetitive and some of them are, it's a long list, but it is important that each question is asked. And if you're using an interpreter, the interpreter asks each of these questions and that a verbal response is given to you. Because sometimes things might be missed or there might be a discussion that's elicited, but it's really, really critical that these questions are answered truthfully and accurately. And so even though it can be painstaking to have an interpreter go through each of these questions, it's part of the application process, and it's what the interpreter needs to do to make sure that everything is being answered correctly. So this long list of questions pertains to eligibility standards. And just because someone might say yes to one of these questions does not necessarily make them ineligible for TPS. It just might mean that a further explanation is required as part of the application. Again, so this list goes on and on. We still have more eligibility questions here. And And it's important to note one question here, number 20D on right here, does not get checked unless 20C has a yes to it. So if you can see here that it says if you answered yes to number 20C, then there's another question. But if you answered no to 20C, like this applicant did, then number 20D remains blank. So just one thing to keep in mind as you're going through your application. Now this page has some questions about participation in military units, specifically question 31A and question 34 pertain to military, paramilitary, or weapons trainings. It's very possible that the Afghan applicants that you're dealing with are going to say yes to these questions because they may have had military service. It's important to note, it's important to answer honestly. You'll need to answer yes to these questions and provide a brief explanation about their service on page 13, which I'll show you in a minute, which has opportunity for further explanation. If the military service was mandatory, then please note that in the explanation. That's an important thing to note, that they were subject to mandatory military service. You should also include the dates of their military service and what their position was within the military. If they served in active combat, then this could be a red flag and you should let a legal captain know so they can provide more guidance on this section. If they served in active combat, you can answer yes after you've talked to a legal captain, and you include in the explanation, I was in the military and in the course of active combat duty, those we were fighting against may have been injured or killed. And they can provide that additional, that information that you were in active combat and those we were fighting against may have been injured or killed. That language needs to go into the explanation after you've conferred with the legal captain about this specific individual you're helping. And it is important that an applicant provides the relevant information so that USCIS can make a determination about whether the applicant's previous activities are covered by one of the TRIG exemptions that are discussed in those Afghan TPS 101 and 102 videos. If an applicant is to answer yes and not provide the relevant information, then USCIS would likely issue a request for evidence, trying to get more information about what happened, and that can slow the process down. So it's helpful here to provide as much information as possible to help USCIS determine that even if someone had one of these issues apply to them, that they are covered by one of the TRIG exemptions talked about in those other training videos. Finally, on the last page here, we have the applicant's contact information and the applicant's signature. If you're doing paper applications, then the applicant will need to print this out and sign this and put the date of the clinic in before they send the whole packet to USCIS. So it's important to flag for the applicant that they will need to sign the document and make sure they know where their signature goes. And depending on how your clinic operates, some clinics will decide that the interpreters who are assisting that day will fill out their interpreter information and will sign their own names. And some clinics might have standard signatures for interpreters to be plugged in that are related to the legal services organization. Same with preparer information. Some clinics may have this preparer information be filled out by the individual preparer who is helping the applicant, and others may have this information already pre-filled out so that it's filled out by someone, a representative from the legal services organization, rather than the individual preparer who's helping you that day. Your clinic, the staff working on the clinic that you are volunteering for will let you know any specifics relevant to the preparer and interpreter information that you might need to know. So that's something that your specific clinic will give you more information about how this final page, page 12, is filled out. And then page 13 here in part 11, this is where you can add additional information. So if there was a question about military service and the answer is yes, then you can put here the page number, part number, and item number of that question and provide a more elaborate on an answer here to provide more information about what was going on, whether it was mandatory military service, what was the rank, whether someone was in active duty. That sort of information can all go here to provide those additional explanations. Okay, now moving on, we're going to talk about the I-765, which is the application for employment authorization. This is also referred to as an EAD, employment authorization document, or a work permit. So right here, the first question is whether you're applying for an initial permission to accept employment. This can be a somewhat confusing topic, but if the applicant has an EAD issued on a different basis, then they still check the initial box because this is their first time seeking employment authorization based on their TPS status in this specific TPS category. So for example, if someone has a pending asylum application and they requested employment authorization as part of that asylum application, they might already have an EAD that's under an asylum code, a C8 code, which is specific employment authorization for pending asylum claims. Now they're applying for TPS, they can apply again for a different EAD, and it's their initial filing based on their TPS status. So the initial permission box would still be checked. Again, if you have questions about that, if that doesn't, if that's confusing, or if you have any further questions about that, check in with your legal captain and they will come and let you know and confirm for you which box you need to check in this section. Now, a lot of the information in the EAD application is going to mirror what you just filled out for your TPS application. So the same issue with names and other names used, if there's a middle name, a different spelling, however, a name might appear on some documents, but not others, then that other information needs to go here. Information about you, mailing address, physical address, the A number, we already reviewed that, gender. And then this question is about whether you want a Social Security card issued to you. So they'll indicate here whether they've previously had a Social Security card. And if not, and if they want one, they can answer yes here that they want one. And there's a required consent for disclosure that's authorizing disclosure of information to the Social Security Administration. It's required for them to say yes. And then they need to fill out this information about their parents' names, their father's name and mother's name, to provide a little more background information for USCIS. So that's the way that someone can seek Social Security card through their employment authorization. Then they enter their country here, more information about them, information about their last arrival into the United States. And again, this is information that will mirror what you put on the TPS application. So you should have already had these conversations with your client and the same information will go in here. For eligibility category, for a TPS seeker, you will use category A12 to fill this in for your TPS seeker. There's different categories depending on what type of application the employment authorization is connected to. So for example, I mentioned for someone with a pending asylum claim, this would be a C8 code that goes here. But for our TPS claims, we're going to fill in A12 as the appropriate code. And then the rest of this information does not need to be completed. It's only relevant to certain, if you had answered yes to previous questions, or if you used certain different codes to seek employment authorization. And so then we get here to the end where the applicant can sign the document. And again, there's space for the applicant's signature, the interpreter's information, and the preparer's information. And your clinic will let you know if there's any special instructions that you need to be aware of with respect to the interpreter and preparer signature and information. And finally, if you needed to elaborate on anything, that will go here in these additional information boxes, just like with the TPS application, had this final page for additional information. Please make sure that on this page, the family name, given name, and A number are completed. Even if you're not adding any information to any of these boxes and they're going to remain blank, it's helpful to have this information complete so we know that USCIS knows that it's part of their application and can see that there's no information here. So please, it's important to fill out this contact information even if the rest of the page remains blank. Okay, now we are going to talk about the cover letter. The cover letter is a optional document, but strongly, strongly recommended document. So for clinic purposes, it is required, even though for TPS eligibility purposes, it's optional. But for this clinic that you're helping with, it is a required document to complete because it serves a couple of purposes. One, it helps USCIS be aware of what's in the TPS packet. And two, it helps the applicant. It serves as a checklist for the applicant after you've concluded your session with them. It helps them know what documents they have, what documents they need to, if there's anything missing that they need to get to put into their packet. It helps them have a clear list of homework, more or less, to know, okay, these are the things we discussed. This is what I need to send off to USCIS. So it's very helpful to have that. Now the template cover letter, you'll have a link in the tip sheet that'll take you to the template cover letter. It might tell you need to download it before editing. If it's a link to a Google Doc or another shared document, then please download it before editing so that you don't accidentally edit the template document itself. But then once you download, you'll see that the document has a space where you plug in the date, and then it has a bunch of different addresses. For TPS, most often we see every country has different addresses where you need to mail your TPS application. So for example, Haitian TPS address is different from Afghanistan TPS, different from Ukrainian TPS, etc. And then adding to that, there's different addresses depending on what state the applicant resides in. So this example, this happens to be a Haitian cover letter. And for Haitian applicants who live in Florida and New York, they have certain addresses where they need to mail their documents. And for all other states, they have certain addresses where they need to mail their documents. So you need to know what state your applicant lives in. The template cover letter should have all of this address information for you. You just need to delete the information that doesn't apply to your client. Then the final wrinkle on all of this is that there's different addresses depending on how the applicant is planning to mail the application. Are they going to send it through United States Postal Service, or are they sending it through FedEx, UPS, or DHL? And there's different addresses depending on that as well. So at the end of the day, you need to ask your client, confirm what state do they live in, and what's the method that they're going to send their application. So for this Haitian example here, let's say I'm working with a client in California. For California, I would go down to this other states, because it's not Florida or New York, other states, and then I would ask them, how do you plan to send this? And if they say FedEx, then I'm going to keep this final address here under FedEx, and all of this other information gets deleted. You don't need to keep it here. You just need to emphasize to your applicant that once they select which manner of they're going to send it, that they need to actually stick to that manner. Because if they pick FedEx and then they actually send it through the Postal Service, they're going to be sending it to the wrong address. So that's your address information. Delete whichever ones don't apply to you. And then in the title line here, you can include whether the template will say the I-821 and I-765, but it's highlighted, so you delete that if it doesn't apply to you, if your applicant is not seeking employment authorization. And then you fill out the client's first name, last name, and A number, so you have that identifying information on the cover letter. Then as for the body of the letter, you'll see here why it serves as a checklist. It's basically an overview of everything that is being included in the application. The actual forms that are included, and then it breaks the evidence down by subject. Identity and nationality evidence, date of entry into the United States evidence, physical presence as evidence, sense, and this is the date for Haitian TPS, but yours would have the Afghan TPS date here. Continuous residence evidence, sense, and again, this would be replaced with the Afghan date. And finally, a money order in the amount of, and it's highlighted here, the money order amount changes depending on whether they're seeking employment authorization or not, and depending on their age. So you'll have to look at a chart of the fees, which is located in your tip sheet, to know how much they need to enclose with their application. And finally, 2 passport photographs are also included. So looking at all of this, you can see, for example, under, let's say, date of entry into the United States, number 4 here. Right now, we've got a copy of the passport, an I-94, notice to appear, or copies of documents from these sections below. Your applicant doesn't need to have all of these things. They might only have their passport. So if all they're including is the passport, then delete the items that they are not including. So you customize this letter to make it match whatever evidence your applicant has. And you'll talk to your applicant about that. Do you have a passport? Do you just have, what evidence do you have? And you'll make this customizable to whatever your applicant will be submitting. Similarly, for physical presence evidence, this list includes employment, rent receipts, utility bills, school records, hospital or medical records, attestations. They might not have all of this. Maybe they've got some medical records and utility bills and rent receipts. And so you just include those items that they have and you delete the things that they don't have and that are not relevant to them. It's important when you're going through this list of evidence that you focus on evidence that is relevant to the time period that is necessary to show continuous residence and continuous physical presence. If they have, let's say they've been in the United States for 15 years, you don't need to show 15 years worth of employment records or 15 years worth of rent receipts, but you do need to show the documents that are most relevant kind of immediately preceding the date of physical presence and after that date as well, so that they have information showing that they were here before and that they were here continuously during the relevant period. So to finalize the cover letter, you delete the addresses that aren't relevant to the applicant, you delete any additional evidence that's not relevant to the applicant, and as I said, the cover letter is also a checklist for the applicant, so it's really important that it's accurate so they have a clear list of what they need to include with their application. Then finally, legal captains and clinic support. Volunteer attorneys use WhatsApp to ask questions. We've already discussed that. And legal captains join the breakout rooms to assist as needed. So when you're asking a question on WhatsApp, indicate what room you're in. Legal question, room 4. And then a legal captain will say, okay, coming, and they'll come to room 4 and you can ask your legal question. The questions should not be specific or have client identifying information in them. Rather, just generally say, I've got a legal question, and the applicant or the captain will come to you. Form preparers do not go in and out of the breakout rooms. Form preparers stay put, and the legal captains come to them. Legal captains must review all documents prior to finalizing. I've said it a few times, but it's really worth repeating that that's essential. Legal captains have to review your documents before you finalize and before the applicant leaves for the day. Because legal captains might have additional legal advice or insights or things that need to be edited or changed. And then, as always, if you don't know the answer to something, if you have any questions or confused, flag a legal captain and have them come chat with you about whatever issues. Instructions on how to end your session will be located in the tip sheet, and it's really dependent on the individual clinic, what the processes and procedures might be for how to wrap up your clinic. So again, refer back to that tip sheet for information on whether you're sending an exit email and what the links are to that exit email, if there's a closing form, how the legal services organization is going to gather the forms that you've filled, how you're going to send those forms to the applicant, and next steps for the applicant. That information will all be in your tip sheet, so please refer to that. Those tip sheets are being personalized for your specific clinic. And then it's important to advise the applicant of next steps, and that information will be in an exit email. Email the documents to the applicant, and remember to CC the legal services org if that's something that they're requiring. Complete the exit form if that's something that's required, and then delete documents from your computer once it's all been emailed and saved elsewhere with the legal services organization so that you don't have it on your personal device. And then you can let the WhatsApp group know that you're ready for another applicant, and you start the process all over again. So thank you for joining for this training. As I mentioned, this is a general training about virtual TPS clinics for Afghans, and if there's any specific information that you need to know that is kind of a tweak on what we've reviewed today, then the organization that you were volunteering with will provide you with that additional information. Thank you so much for your help, for volunteering, for helping this vulnerable group of people seek TPS. Really, the work that you're doing is essential to providing immigration benefits for all, so for all who are eligible for them. So thank you so much for your assistance today in helping this population.